Welcome, everybody, to The Thoughtful Bro, streaming live today, as usual, on a mighty blaze. It's so great to have you here, and it's wonderful to have one of the authors I've been a fan of the longest, since his very first book. And you can't say that with everybody, that I've loved them since their first book, but that is the truth about our distinguished guest today, Ben Fountain, and we'll get to more about Ben in a moment. But if you don't know, now you know that The Thoughtful Bro is here on every Tuesday for what makes great books tick, what makes great authors tick. We're broadcasting on a mighty blaze, which is an all-volunteer initiative, of course, started in COVID to help writers reach readers virtually during COVID and beyond. And at Mighty Blaze, we're never asking for money. If you want to show the love for Mighty Blaze or The Thoughtful Bro, please just like us, subscribe, tell your friends about us, retweet us, all the good things. But if you are in the mood to spend money, I have an idea for you. Please spend it on international thrillers that provide the perfect blend of action, intrigue, history, greed, and more, all wrapped in the tale of Americans abroad in Haiti. Books like Devil Makes Three by Ben Fountain. We're going to put some links to buy that in the chat from no less than 3 of Ben's favorite Dallas hometown bookstores. So please, if you're going to buy a copy of Devil Makes Three, support those local bookstores. You'll see the links come up in the chat in a moment. And now a bit more about Ben. Ben Fountain was born in Chapel Hill and grew up in the tobacco country of Eastern North Carolina. He is a former practicing attorney and the author of the short story collection Brief Encounters with Che Guevara, which won the Penn Hemingway Award and the Barnes & Noble Discover Award for fiction. His his first novel was the satire Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, which won the National Book Critics Circle Award and was a finalist for the National Book Award. It was adapted into a feature film directed by 3-time Oscar winner Ang Lee. And in 2018, Ben published Beautiful Country Burn Again, which is a work of nonfiction that covered the 2016 election. He is now here with his second novel, Devil Makes Three. The book is set in Haiti during the bloody months of the 1991 coup d'etat, which sent the newly elected president Jean-Bertrand Aristide into exile. It is a fierce and sprawling story of Haiti's poverty, criminality, corruption, moral complexity, as well as its spirituality and beauty. Ron Charles, writing in the Washington Post, called it, quote, a novel of ideas in the best sense, a big, deeply humane political thriller that provides the flame of proves the flame of Graham Greene and John le Carré is still burning. Francine Prose, writing in the New York Times, put it this way. She compared it to Heart of Darkness, and she said it's, quote, a classic colonial story. A foreigner who is most often white, male, and frequently English-speaking travels to a region about which he knows almost nothing, and through ignorance or innocence, through good intentions or greed, makes life worse for the locals. And I think one of the most ringing endorsements of all was from a Goodreads reviewer who wrote this. After reading Devil Makes Three, I may now be qualified to both be a deep sea trawler. I may now be qualified to both captain a deep sea trawler and overthrow the Haitian government. So Ben, welcome to the show.
All right. Thank you, Mark. I like all that.
Well, the book is getting a great response, and I was so happy to see it. I mean, you don't get a Ben Fountain book very often. You usually got to wait about 6 years, it seems, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a slow burn, and I don't know, to the extent I ever figure things out, it takes me a while, and I've sort of made my peace with that. I mean, I work pretty much every day. I push it along as fast as I can, but I'm just kind of I'm a snail. I'm a turtle. I'm not a rabbit.
All right. Well, on that note, and loath as this may be to you to bring up the Malcolm Gladwell article, I just cannot help but bring it up. And we're going to try to see if we can squeeze some new juice from that fruit, because I will say this. I mean, there's only a few New Yorker articles that have really stuck with me through the years. And that article about late bloomers was one of them, partly because I, at the young age of 46, am now about to publish my first book. So certainly I find your story relatable in that regard. But I sort of maybe had an instinct way back when that article came out in 2008 that maybe I was headed along the late bloomers path. But for those who may not know, Malcolm Gladwell wrote this really memorable article that is often brought up to Ben in interviews called Late Bloomers, where he talks about people who just kind of artistically bloom later in life and versus prodigies who bloom very early. And he compares the prodigy is like a Picasso type, and the late bloomer is like a Cézanne type, and Ben is the the Cezanne type. But I guess, so just to start off with that, looking back on that article and like how you were characterized and how it may or may not have impacted your career, like, what's your feeling about that article kind of 15 years on?
It's fun. It's
Yeah.
I mean, it was a pleasure to hang out with Malcolm Gladwell, just the personal experience of that. Um he explored I mean, he brought out a really interesting and useful angle. And that is somebody like me who takes a long time to develop really needs a staunch backer. Whether I think in Cezanne's case, it was his father. In my case, it was my wife. And she never faltered. She never lost faith. She said, "You keep doing what you're doing." And sometimes I have a lecture I give. It's called "How to Get a Book Contract in Only 17 Years." And it plays more as stand-up comedy than an actual lecture because it's kind of funny in this twisted, sick way. But when anybody else, myself and my wife, would have said, "Okay, this just isn't working. You need to find something else." I kept going, and she backed me. So Malcolm's article brought out a really useful aspect of this whole experience, and that is, it's really hard to do this on your own.
Mm.
You've got to have a network or a significant person in your life who believes in you and helps you keep going.
And I've heard you talk about this topic a number of times. And one of the things that I can most relate to, and which I think you're most eloquent about, is the way in which in American society, it is very difficult to exist without the cover of an institution to your career. And, if you are somebody who's like, I'm just a writer, and I don't have any books out. I mean, that might work in the south of France, but it's not going to work in the south of Texas, where like how big your car is and how big your house is are just so important. And you just don't have a kind of institutional story or institutional approval in your life. And I just have heard you talk about how naked you felt back in those days. And it's just something I can really relate to. And I think it's especially difficult in America to live that way.
Yeah, I think increasingly so too. I mean, so much of our identity tends to be bound up in our institutional identity, and I mean, we get our validation from externals as opposed to working on the inside out. And I didn't realize that would be such a big part of it when I left
Mm.
the law and started writing. But I felt kind of like a crustacean without a shell. I mean, psychologically, you're just kind of naked and exposed, and it shouldn't matter, but it does. And
Hmm.
and so for me, it was a question of trying to build my identity from the inside out. It's like, this is who I am, and for better or worse, this is how I'm holding myself out in the world.
Kudos to you. I've been there myself. And so, last question on this topic is: you have crossed that desert. I mean, after only 17 years, you crossed that desert, and now you've gotten commercial and critical success, which is so wonderful. And I guess just boil it down for us. Like, tell us something that you know now after 17 years that you didn't know. And it's possible that you could say, like, there's nothing that I could have known that would have hastened the 17 years. There's no knowledge. It had to be lived. And only through 17 years of living through it could you have learned to do it. But I'm wondering, like, if there's anything sort of maybe you wish you could have known during that odyssey, what would it have been?
That's a great question. It's something I've thought about a lot. I mean, I do not want people to follow my or career trajectory in terms of chronology. I mean, I hope it happens faster for everyone than it did for me. Um, for a lot of years, I I was going down the wrong path. I was focusing on externals and kind of skating past the emotional heart of things.
Mm.
And I think if I'd had a good teacher or a good writing group, and notice, I mean, good is the operative word there, somebody who could have pointed out, look, you're skating past the hard stuff. You really need to dig into that would have helped. I'll be very frank in this as well. Doing psychoanalysis was one of the best things I ever did for myself as a person and also a writer. I mean,
Mm,
in my late 30s, I did it for 5 years.
mm,
And just that weekly steady work of doing the hard stuff, looking deep into yourself and developing that discipline, that practice of looking deep into yourself. I think that was a huge part of helping me become, you know, a writer who might write something worthwhile someday. And because even though, like, if we do research and we build this, we do the world building of fiction, but ultimately the guts of it, so much of it depends on what's inside the particular writer and how deeply the writer is willing and can go into that interiority. And
mm.
and after a couple of years of seeing The Shrink, and I had a really good shrink, I felt like, yeah, I think this is really helping my writing. So I would urge people, to consider that as well.
Mm. We have a question that just came in, which I think I'll just ask quickly now, which is from Renee, who asks, "Do you have a good writing group now?"
No, and I never did. Um, I mean, I started writing in Dallas in the late '80s and early '90s, and there just weren't many writers around. And over the years, I've found my people, but at this point, for better or worse, I go it alone. The first person who sees my work is my agent, and then my editor. And I think I've come to trust all the errors I make, all the false trails I go down. I mean, I'm almost willing to say that's a necessary part of the process, but that's just me talking. And we
Mm,
all have to figure it out for ourselves. And if you can get into a good MFA program, where you're going to come out debt free and it's got good instructors and you have your head screwed on right when you go in, like this is 2 or 3 years where I can really work on my writing, and not worry about the careerist aspect of it. Or if you can hook up with a good writing group where people with sharp critical eyes but with generous hearts,
mm.
I think that's gold. And so I think it's worth exploring, even though those are not the routes I took.
I would wholeheartedly agree with you there, and just say, like, for me, I've got a great agent and I've got a great editor, but there's zero question in my mind what the biggest break of my career was, and that was getting in this wonderful writing group here in Boston, run by a local author named Jenna Blum. And I just think every success that I've had, including my agent, my editor, including this show, and the fact that we're on the air right now, sort of, I can trace it all back to this one really quality group of people.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with that. Even though I took a different route, I'm certainly open to. I mean, we all have to figure it out for ourselves, right?
Hmm. Hmm. All right, so let's get into the book. So, difficult with a book that's so expansive and such a big book as this, but just tell us, if you could, in kind of a thumbnail sketch, what is Devil Makes Three about?
Well, the context is historical. It begins the day after the coup d'état, as you said, that took out President Jean-Bertrand Aristide. He was a former Catholic priest from a very tough parish in Port-au-Prince, and he was swept into office on a popular landslide. And what he was promising was, some measure of social justice, economic justice for the poor and working people of Haiti, as much as he could deliver within the system he had to work with. Um, he lasted in office 7 months and was taken out in a military coup d'état that was clearly with the complicity and probably with done with a lot of help by the Central Intelligence Agency and other arms of the United States government. Um, I have three main characters. They're all fictional, and they are trying to make their way in the aftermath of the coup. And one is Matthew Amaker. He's in his late 20s. He's an expat American. He's come to Haiti to start a scuba dive shop with a Haitian business partner named Alex Variel. The second main character is also American. It's a young woman named Audrey O'Donnell. She's a rookie CIA case officer. Haiti is her first posting, and she is a very ambitious uh, young woman. She is a strong believer in the American mission of democracy, free markets, globalism, capitalism, and she feels like, certainly global capitalism is the only way for Haiti to make it in the world. The the third main character is Alex Variel's little sister, Misha. And Misha is a book nerd. And I mean, I love her for that. Um, and and anyway, she's getting her PhD at Brown University in the scholarship of the Black Atlantic, and she ends up coming back to Haiti to deal with the family situation, and ends up taking a leave of absence from her PhD program to stay in Haiti for a while. And so you get these three main characters with a lot of secondary characters. It's a heavily populated novel. Um, but anyway, it's these three people trying to figure out their lives in the aftermath of this coup, and in this atmosphere of severe political oppression. There's an international embargo that's slapped on Haiti pretty quickly after the coup, so it's a very intense time in Haiti.
I think the characters are incredibly well drawn and just perfectly created and selected by you to kind of unpack the real mystery, which I think is at the center of this book, if I may, which is this question, which I think is basically undergirding almost every page, which is, what is Haiti? What is Haiti? Why is Haiti this way? How did it get this way? Who made it this way? Who's making it this way now? I mean, there's just this, it felt to me so much like there is just a relentless drive within you as an artist to kind of, in a kind of three-dimensional way, or like kind of beyond three-dimensional, just from every angle, let's see if we can somehow figure out why Haiti is this like messy, complex, sometimes lawless, beautiful place that it is. And I guess my question to you about that is, I mean, I just said the question in the book is, what is Haiti? But I guess my question to you is, why Haiti for you? Like, why are you so driven to understand this country?
Yeah, let me see if I can answer that in 24 hours or less. Um, I started getting interested in Haiti and then started going to Haiti because the more I paid attention to it, the more I felt like it is ground zero.
Mm.
It is ground zero for so much of the way we live, why the world is the way it is, for all these legacies of, you know, racialized capitalism, slavery, uh, uh, power, politics, race. I mean, I felt like all these things were like Haiti was ground zero for them in the beginning, and all of these legacies are still playing out in Haiti in these very intense and brutal ways. And so I started going to Haiti thinking there's something here I need to try to understand. And I made my first trip there in 1991, and I made at least two trips there every year for the next 25 years. And, got my French back from college, got pretty good at Haitian Creole, read everything I could get my hands on about Haiti. It's just so it wasn't so much research as just a way I was living my life. And, being tied as closely as I could be to Haiti. Um, let me come at it from this direction. I mean, Haiti was the most lucrative colony in the world on the eve of the Haitian Revolution in 1791. It produced more wealth for France than all of its other colonies put together.
Mm.
I mean, coffee and sugar mainly, and it all rested on the backs of enslaved people of color. And what Haitians did, what those enslaved people did in the revolution that lasted for 13 years was they said no. They said, we reject this role that the Western world has assigned to us, namely that we are to live We are to exist as units of economic production as opposed to human beings. And we refuse that. That was such a powerful thing to do. I mean, and it was a very threatening thing for the Western world, the European world. I mean, for one thing, the United States lived in terror of the Haitian Revolution, the idea of slaves rising up and successfully throwing off this role that had been assigned to them and creating their own independent country. Haiti has been paying the price for that ever since. And I could go through the historical record, but the coup d'etat in 1991 was yet another example of Haitians with the election of Jean-Bertrand Aristide saying, no, we refuse the role that you, the West, that you, global capitalism, are trying to assign to us, namely that we have to exist as units of economic production. We insist on our humanity and living as human beings. And of course, the coup d'etat was a counter reaction to that. No, Haitians, actually, you are going to have to live under the thumb of this economic system, that the mainstream economic system. I would say that all of us who do not belong to the 1% have a great deal in common with the Haitian Revolution, with the trajectory of Haitian history, in that we are all attempting to live our lives not as units of economic production, but as fully formed human beings. And we are engaged in that struggle every day. And so, I mean, to the extent that we're glued to our iPhones and we're glued to social media and we're glued to consumerism, I mean, it's all trying to suck us into this economic vortex. And yet I think we're all in our own way, whether consciously or not, we're trying to eke out a little bit of wiggle room where we do have agency, autonomy, and we're trying to create some meaningful measure of self-determination for ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, you just touched on just a few things that are so fascinating about Haiti's history and things that I didn't really know until I started engaging with this book, just about how, I mean, it's one of the first places Christopher Columbus landed, and the Haitians have a very strong feeling about Christopher Columbus. And also the thing that fascinated me most that came up when I was reading this book was this Constitution of 1791 and how radical it was, and how under the Constitution, everybody is Black in Haiti. Even white people are Black. Could you just talk about that for a moment? It's startling to kind of hear it.
Yeah. So the Constitution, after this long and very bloody civil war, when Haiti finally achieved its independence, and these formerly enslaved people created the most advanced constitution of its time. And historians like to say the most radical constitution of its time. To me, I say it's the most reasonable constitution of its time. And yes, I mean, it's a colorblind constitution. Like, we're all Black. There's no divisions by race. I mean, that's more in law than in fact. But also, for instance, there was a provision in the Constitution that said, if you are a persecuted indigenous person, or if you are an enslaved person and you make it to Haiti's shores, you are free. You have asylum. You are safe. You are one of us. We will take you in. To me, that's the most decently human thing a country could put in its constitution. It's like, it's not just for us. Freedom is for everybody. Self-determination is for everybody. If you come here, you have asylum. And it really was an extraordinary document. And so I've kind of lost my thread of thought, but yeah, I call it the most reasonable constitution as opposed to the most radical constitution.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just bring it up in terms of Haiti just being such a place of contradiction, in the sense that it is like so romantically inspiring in many ways. And yet it's just, the phrase you use in the book is Haiti's famous poverty. It's like, it's famous for how devastated it is in a lot of ways.
Well, there are good historical reasons for that. And for one thing, that bloody war of attrition, the revolution, I mean, France would not quit.
Mm.
And even when there was peace, Napoleon, by treachery, kidnapped and imprisoned the leader of the revolution, Toussaint Louverture. And so the revolution, I mean, it had to continue for another very bloody 4 or 5 years. By the end, the country was devastated. So that's one thing. Another thing was the indemnity that the French forced Haiti to pay as reparations to former slave owners for the loss of their quote property.
Mm.
And this indemnity was forced on Haiti at the point of a gun. I mean, a French fleet, arrived in Haitian waters in 1826, and the ultimatum was, if you don't agree to pay us this enormous indemnity, we're going to blow your cities to smithereens. And so Haiti didn't finish paying off that indemnity until the late 1940s.
Wow.
And so when you think about the wealth that was extracted from Haiti because of that indemnity, I mean, the country wasn't starting at zero. It was starting at -10.
Mm.
And so, and again, Haiti has paid the price for being the first Black republic, the first and so far only country to have been created out of a successful slave revolution. I mean, the world has always been coming at Haiti, trying to make an example of it, in in effect saying, no, you can't resist us. You cannot resist global capitalism. You have to conform. And Haiti has paid a very severe price for that, for its resistance.
Mm. Well, folks, as you can see, listening to just this is the tip of the iceberg here about how complex and interesting, and how, as you say, Ben, it's sort of a ground zero kind of epicenter for all the kind of geopolitical, historical threads that weave through the settling of the Western hemisphere. So there's all that kind of history in the book, but I want to move on to other aspects of the book as well, which is like, it's set in 1991, and you're talking about the way Haiti is today. And I think one way to kind of summarize a lot of the different aspects of what is happening is American meddling. I mean, foreign meddling, but particularly American meddling. It's American economic meddling, military meddling, government meddling, medical meddling, every kind of meddling. And I think so much of what you've been great at writing about across your books is this. I think it's actually one of, like, in my view, one of the great projects of your work is to just show Americans, what does American imperialism really look like outside of a halftime show at Dallas Cowboy Stadium? I mean, that it looks one way, and you talked about, how American imperialism looks when presented by Americans to sympathetic Americans. But this book is in some ways sort of the other side of that. It's like, what does American imperialism look like on the ground? And just all the different threads and all the different kind of manners of exploitation that are used there. And I guess, to put a question to this, I mean, please respond to any of that, but the question might be, is there some good in Americans abroad trying to kind of, who motivated by idealism, and someone like, say, Paul Farmer or something, right? I mean, there's an example, but I mean, there's so many mixed, it's like sort of where Haiti is where idealism goes to die in a way, or like the simple American story goes to die. And anyway, I guess this is just a very open-ended question about kind of what your feelings are about Americans trying to export their idealism and what happens when it actually hits the ground in Haiti.
Yeah. People say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I prefer good intentions to bad intentions. And believe me, I've seen a lot of people over the years come to Haiti with good intentions, genuinely good intentions. I would put myself in that category. I came to Haiti to try to understand and to try to engage with this very complex reality that's going on in Haiti. So I'm in favor of good intentions. I'm even more in favor of informed, savvy, streetwise, well-educated, good intentions. Because it is so easy to get in over your head, to start working within and for the benefit of basically an extractive, exploitative system. If you don't know what you're doing, you can do a lot more harm than if you had never come in the first place. So, Paul Farmer is a great example of somebody, I mean, eyes wide open.
Mm.
I mean, he had a full heart. He also had a full head. Very smart guy. And he was always, always working against the established system. He had to, but he was very smart in how he would do it. I mean, he knew that you couldn't go head on at a bureaucracy. You had to chip at it from the sides. You had to make the right noises, but you had to be smart enough to find a way to do it your own way, which would be more effective. And he did it over and over and over again. And so I would encourage all of us to study Paul Farmer's career. I mean, not only a brilliant physician and a brilliant anthropologist, because he had this side career. He had a PhD in anthropology. He had this side career of publishing these brilliant scholarly books on the intersection of medicine and power and society. But he was also this great like diplomat, bureaucratic infighter, just this extremely savvy individual. So, I mean, trying to, I mean, when I started this book in 2013, I mean, I'd been going to Haiti by then for 22 years, and I had one failed novel about Haiti in the drawer. And I thought, well, maybe I have the writer chops to go at it again. And I had all these things that I felt like needed to be taken account of to write an authentic book about Haiti. I mean, all this history, all this politics, all these economics. Well, if you try to layer that stuff on from the outside, you're going to kill the book.
Mm.
I mean, that's the surest way to make sure a novel is dead on arrival. And so, how do you weave it into the narrative? How do you weave it into the lives of the characters in a way that's natural and in a way that comes from the inside out, as opposed to the writer kind of slapping, this veneer on the outside of the story? And so, to me, that was a major challenge of the book. And so, how the hell do I do that? Well, I mean, I was, I mean, you can get jammed up really easy with all these big themes and things banging around in your head. And one thing I learned on Billy Lynn is write the story, write the person, start at the level of the line. If you tell Billy Lynn's story correctly, all that big stuff will take care of itself. And so I felt like, with Matt, the scuba dive guy, with Audrey, the CIA case officer, with Misha, the scholar of the Black Atlantic who ends up working in a hospital in Haiti, just tell their story. And if you do it properly, all the big stuff will be in there. So that's the approach I took.
Yeah. And I think another thing that just keeps coming through in the book is just, you're trying to kind of put together the pieces on why is Haiti how it is and why do people live the way they do and what's the sources of its culture and so on. But I think, again, like the question of what is the American character and how is the American character expressed through our policy and what does it look like to a Haitian? These are big questions for you too. And I just feel like with you, Ben, it's so funny. I just think that, you've talked about the origin of the Billy Lynn book and you talk about you were watching this halftime show and you just thought, what the hell is going on here with these cheerleaders dancing around and shaking their butts? And then you got these veterans fresh off, like coming back from the war and they're at midfield and they're laughing and they're drinking and you just looking at the TV screen and thinking like, what is my country about? Like, I don't understand my country at all, I think is the phrase that you sometimes use. So I guess my question to you here is like, so now, you're kind of looking at Haiti and how American policy, kind of filters through Haiti. Do you feel like you understand America more now than maybe you did 10 years ago when you wrote Billy Lynn? Or do you feel like you understand it less? Or how has that understanding changed?
Yeah, and I never did answer your previous question about American imperialism and how it looks out there. So maybe, I can answer the two together. I better know more. I mean, because I've been working really hard on all this stuff for the last 10 years. So, if I don't know more, I'm even denser than I think. Um, working on Beautiful Country Burn Again, the book about the 2016 election, that was an education in itself. And I'd been working on Devil Makes Three. It hadn't been going well. I went off for 3 years, wrote this nonfiction book about American politics. And when I came back, I felt stronger. I could see Devil Makes Three all of a sudden in a way I couldn't before. And so I don't know, just maybe that deep immersion in political analysis and really thinking about it and reading lots of different people. But then you go to a place like Haiti. And so you start, I mean, you have to pay attention to how power is acquired, maintained, and applied in that setting.
Mm.
And I mean, as I was writing Devil Makes Three in the second iteration, I realized I've really got to get into the nuts and bolts of how these things work. Like, for instance, Audrey, the CIA case officer, she is running an operation which the cover of it is it's a humanitarian aid organization. In fact, it's a front for running arms into the military regime. And cocaine is going out the other way, just as it was all through the 1980s, in Central America. And so I thought, well, how exactly do these things work? Where does the money come from?
Mm.
And, what are the nuts and bolts of it? And so I got into the weeds on that. I felt like I had to. The devil is in the damn details. I mean, for me to satisfy myself, what exactly is power?
Mm.
And how is it applied? How do these mofos go about it? I wanted to know. And so I felt like I had to go there at the risk of losing some readers. Like, I'm sure some readers are going to say, why in the hell are we going into, these funding mechanisms and
Mm-hmm.
overseas bank accounts and all? But that's where the devil lives. And so, Haitians, there's a Haitian proverb that says, "By oublié, pote max songer." Okay, the one who delivers the blow forgets. The one who carries the scar remembers.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the power position. It's so easy to dismiss or forget about the harm you do, the way you inflict power. But if you're on the receiving end of it, you never forget.
Mm-hmm.
And Haitians are extremely perceptive and just acutely aware of power dynamics in the world. And they gave me a real education in American imperialism. I mean, for instance, when I first started going, they would say, well, so and so CIA, or this is part of the American plan. And after a few years, I started to realize, well, if it's not literally true, there's a hell of a lot of truth behind that statement.
Mm. Wow. So many great things there. So I've heard a similar phrase, which is the axe forgets, but the tree remembers, which is a similar idea. And it's another thought I had when you were talking about, what is the shape of power and how is power maintained and how that is like a kind of principal inquiry of your book. And it really made me think of something that Robert Caro once said about his book, The Power Broker, about Robert Moses and the building of New York. And he said that that book is 1,000 pages long and it seems to be about, infrastructure in New York City. But really, my only topic has ever been, how does political power actually work? And all of a sudden, I'm like looking at your book and thinking of The Power Broker. And I'm like, there's a connection there and there's a similarity there. A few more questions before we go to some audience questions. Ben, there is a massive amount of energy spent in the publishing world thinking about, talking about, and taking action about appropriation, and sort of who has the right to tell what stories. And this is not something that is new to you. And because I know that you did not serve in the military, and so people, when you wrote Billy Lynn's Halftime Walk, people in the military would kind of have this question like, Do you have the right to tell a story about the military, and so on? In the New York Times review, Francine Prose wrote, "It takes courage to set an extremely complicated work of fiction in Haiti and to write across lines of class, color, gender, ideology, and nationality." At least in Francine Prose's estimation, like, this is very courageous for you to do this. But I just want to hear what you have to say about this argument of how can a white man from Dallas write from the perspective of a young Black Haitian woman?
It's a serious thing. And it is not anything to be undertaken lightly. I mean, writers have written across, categories outside their experience for millennia. And I think generally that's a perfectly honorable thing to do, if you put in the work. But I think, in this instance, when we're talking about this particular kind of history, Europeans moving into the New World and the genocide of indigenous people that followed, and the kidnapping of 13 million Africans from their homes and being taken to the New World to be held in bondage. I really wonder if the usual rules, I wonder if they might not apply. In other words, we're talking about a scale of immorality, depravity that puts us in a different category.
Mm.
And so I thought about this every day for the last 10 years. On the other hand, I was there during the coup years. And I was going all through the time of that very oppressive regime. And I saw what I saw and I heard what I heard. I was there. And I started thinking, what if somebody like me had made it into the Warsaw Ghetto in 1943? We're talking about a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant American male. Made it into the Warsaw Ghetto, made it out, and then said, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Polish, I don't have a right to write about this. I would consider that a gross dereliction of duty. I would consider that a huge moral failing. And so with this book, I feel like I'm caught between two moral hazards. On the one hand, I'm a white guy, white American, writing about Haiti, and part of the book is from the point of view of a young Haitian American woman, a woman of color. On the other hand, like, I feel a moral imperative to write this story. And the only way I could have any hope to do it properly would be, like, as I discovered in the writing, was to have Misha in the book and to have her be, a very central point of view figure in the book. So the question is not resolved in my mind. It's still an open question. I don't know if it will ever be resolved in my mind. I will say, when you do this kind of work, you really have to follow your head and your heart where they lead. Otherwise, you won't have a chance at doing anything worthwhile. And so ultimately, that's what I did. Followed my head and my heart, and I hope I did it properly.
What a wonderful answer. Thanks, Ben. Last question for me about Haiti. You've spent so much time there. I think back in 2008 in the Malcolm Gladwell article, you said you'd been there more than 30 times by 2008. That's like 15 years ago. So who knows? Maybe you've been there 60 times, 70 times now. Who knows? But in all that time, you've acquired so much knowledge about the culture, which has made it into this book. Here's my question for you. What have you brought into your life from your time in Haiti? Like, in your daily life there in Dallas, Texas, what is something that wouldn't be in your life but is? And that could even be like a mindset or an attitude, as much as anything else. What is in your life that Haiti brought you?
A lot of love. A lot of love. I have met people through Haiti, Haitians and foreigners, who are a big part of my life. And my life is so much better for that. And they've taught me so much on every level. And they've encouraged my humanity, these relationships. And so, love, a lot of love.
Wonderful. And this is the final question for me, and then we're going to take, there's a bunch of audience questions and we're going to get to them. But the last question for me is to pivot about your Dallas life. This is the literary provinces, so to speak. This is not a literary hotbed the way it is in Brooklyn or Paris or wherever. I think it's deeply interesting that you live in Dallas, and I'm just wondering, what has that been like? And just to put a fine point on this question so we can move on to audience questions, what do you get as a writer out of living in Dallas that you would which would not be available to you if you lived in a place that's kind of, say, more friendly to the arts?
Yeah, a lot of pushback, and I think that's good for a writer. I mean, to have your assumptions, your attitude, your sensibility challenged. It's like it keeps you on your toes. I think if I lived in Austin, or back when Austin was good, or Seattle or Brooklyn, I might fall asleep because there would be so many people of like mind that, whereas Dallas, man, it is coming at me every day. And so I'm always having to question myself and the validity of what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling.
Yeah, it does. Do you feel like I find that same thing. I like the idea that I kind of had a different career first, and a lot of the friends I made in my life are not artists, because I do think there can be a bit of an echo chamber aspect to being friends with artists. And I always just the one way that I phrase it to myself is I just always like to think how my writing will play for all the non-artists in my life. And that's just sort of my first gut check. Not do my artist friends like it, because it's just, you never know. They're all trying to breathe the same air, and they have all kinds of agendas that they bring to that discussion, but just a kind of normal person. And there you are in Dallas, kind of surrounded by such people.
Well, one of the things I wanted to do with Devil Makes Three is write a ripping yarn. A book where people want to turn pages, where it's like, well, damn, I want to see what happens next. And, you've got treasure hunting, you've got drug smuggling, drug running, you've got CIA skullduggery, you've got hospital administration, which, is always, makes the heart quicken. I wanted to write just a really good, compelling story where stuff happens. And partly that's because that's the kind of book I like to read. But also, like, I'm thinking about the people around me in Dallas and what's going to hook them into a novel about Haiti.
Right. Okay, let's go to some audience questions real quick. We've gone a little bit long here, but it's just so wonderful talking to Ben. Have any Haitians read your novel and given you feedback? Thanks, Renee.
Yeah, a couple of people who have blurbed it. Yannick Lahens. I've had a couple of other readers. Not as many as I wanted to yet. Haiti being what it is right now, it's very tough to go there. Mail is non-existent. So, but hopefully over time, it will do its work in Haiti.
That reminds me of another question I wanted to ask you when you brought up Haitian writers who have blurbed. Give us one or two recommendations. A Haitian artist, a Haitian musician, a writer. Where should people start or continue if they already are interested in Haitian culture?
Well, that's one of the things that's going on in the book, and that's one of the things that Misha does for us. The book basically gives you a syllabus on Haitian reading, and on history and on fiction. Her father is a music impresario, and so there's a fair amount of music in there. Not so much about Haitian art, but you can find that in some of the short stories I've written. But a touchstone for Misha in the book, and for me as well, is a writer named Marie Vieux Chauvet. And she was a very fine Haitian novelist. And two of her books have been reissued in English translations recently. And the English titles are Dance on the Volcano and Love, Anger, Madness. And those are in print. And that's a great place to start in terms of Haitian literature.
Terrific. Great. Let's do two more questions we have time for. Okay. Fellow late bloomer here. What is your advice to other late bloomers trying to break into the arts at a, in parentheses, somewhat advanced age?
Follow your head and your heart. I mean, you're doing this for a reason. And I think it must be a powerful thing in you, whatever art you're pursuing. And so honor that. And where your interest takes you, where your emotional center is, go straight at that. And I think that's the best advice I can give you.
Great. Let's do one final question from the audience. I loved Beautiful Country Burn Again. Do you think American authoritarianism is a disease that will generate antibodies, or a terminal illness that will kill its host? Quite a question.
Wow, that's quite a question. It's a really relevant question, and beautifully put in a way that should get everybody's attention. I don't know. It remains to be seen. I mean, twice before in American history, our country has really gone right up to the cusp of self-destructing. First time was the Civil War, obviously, over slavery. The second time was the Great Depression, where we came closer to an existential meltdown than I think mainstream history takes account of. I think we're in a similar point right now. I mean, we are at an existential moment for the country, and I think the only way we're going to come out of it a stronger country, a better country, is through collective grassroots action, taking taking control of our own fates at the local level. Sometimes people ask me, they say, well, what do you think the Democrats should do to become more relevant? And I say, I think the Democrats should become more like Black Panthers were. And what do I mean by that? They worked in their own communities and they did tangible things for people, like free breakfast for school kids, like health clinics and health cooperatives, and self-defense in the neighborhood, taking care of one another. So I think building community from the ground up and working with one another in the community, doing things together so that we start to see one another as fellow human beings again, as opposed to people on our screens, who are so much easier to demonize and hate. I think it's going to take us at the local level doing our work.
What a great answer. Geez, Ben, you never disappoint. I never know quite how you're going to come at a question, but God, it's always compelling. Ben Fountain, this has been wonderful. The book, folks, is called Devil Makes Three. We are putting the link to buy that from any of Ben's 3 favorite local bookstores in Dallas. Please support your local indies. And Ben, before we wrap, I always ask this question at the end of all my interviews. Imagine the perfect reader for Devil Makes Three, somebody who's just receiving the book in just the way you hoped in your wildest dreams. Now imagine this ideal reader has just finished reading and closed the book, and the book is on their lap. Describe for me in a phrase or even just a single word, what is the feeling that this reader has?
I just read a damn good novel.
There you go.
I'll leave it at
that. Oh, that's amazing. Well, folks, it is a damn good novel, and it does all the things. And I would just say in parting that, you read the reviews, and the reviews are uniformly rave positive reviews. And the kind of a thread that goes through them all is just sort of, this is what novels can do. They can talk about big issues, big ideas, philosophy, history, politics, and also tell you a wonderfully thrilling story. So it's sort of like a kind of an exhibition of like, hey, folks, look at what the novel can do. That's how I took it.
All right. Thank you, Mark. It has been a tremendous pleasure to be on your show. I'll come back anytime.
Hey, well, I hope it's not another 6 years, but right. So we'll see. Ben, this has been great. Folks, thank you for joining. I appreciated all the comments. Kim, Renee, everybody in the comments. I saw you guys, and thank you for all your questions as well. Folks, we'll see you next week on The Thoughtful Bro. The book is Devil Makes Three by Ben Fountain. Ben, once again, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Mark.